Hey, what's up there, folks? We haven't done a live stream in a while. Just wanted to do a quick live stream here and just show you a little bit about some things that I've been picking up on as it pertains to site grading. I know with the sites feature here within the tool space, I know that sometimes when I first got into Civil 3D, it was a little bit confusing, to be honest with you, but I think that there's a way to be able to use sites to your advantage when it comes to determining drainage patterns for site grading. And currently, I have just kind of like a basic site right here. Let me just save what I have. Right now, I'm just coming up with some brand new content for my parking lot grading course, which currently exists within my channel right now. But this is just going to be an addition to the course. We'll call this drawing 1. But let me make sure that my levels are good. Okay, we should be good. Okay, so when it comes to like grading parking lots and things like that, there's a lot of changes that tend to take place when you're designing this stuff, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. But if you have a little bit of a process put together to where you're able to determine different drainage patterns for different maybe parking lots within your site, then you can use maybe sites to your advantage. Another advantage too is that when it comes to grading a surface, you know, using some relative feature lines are wonderful. And we're going to be getting into that. In other words, we're going to be setting elevations for our feature lines, and say for example the top of our curb is going to be relative to maybe our edge of pavement feature lines. So we'll get into that a little bit further. If you have any sort of questions, let's go ahead and save that till the end of this live stream, just because I want to be able to get through all of what I'm going to be showing you guys, and I don't want to risk people getting too upset with too many interruptions and whatnot. So I'm just going to go through this straight through, and then if you have any questions, if you have any comments, hopefully I can help you out at the end. So let's go ahead and get into this. So right now I just have just a basic site, and everything here is just polylines. Let me check and make sure that people can hear me. Hello, 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 testing, testing, testing. All right, there we go. There ain't nothing worse than doing a whole live stream and the sound's not on, right? Okay, so we have a basic site, and what I would like to do is I'd like to organize a lot of my components into sites. So what do we have here? We have building 1, we've got parking lot 1, and we have pond 1. So what I can do is I can go into my sites, right click, and I'm just going to create a brand new site. And I'm going to call this buildings. Okay. Next, I'm going to create a brand new site. I'm going to call this parking lot. Well, let's make it plural. That's fine. Okay. And after that, it's going to be, you guessed it, pond. Okay, so we've got 3 different sites. And these sites, as you're adding feature lines, what's great about sites is that you can encapsulate your feature lines so that they're not in conflict with each other as you're going through your design within the program. So in other words, if I'm grading out my parking lot, I don't want my feature lines from my building to interfere with my parking lot at this point. I only want to focus on one particular area at a time. And that's extremely important because when you're getting into drainage patterns, you want to have kind of like a method to the madness, because a lot of site grading is a little bit of artistry. You have to be able to approach it in a particular way, and not every way I guess every artist is different, so there might be one engineer that might want to grade something in a particular drainage pattern, while another engineer might say, no, I want to grade it this way. So, you can come into conflict when it comes to people's interpretation as to the right drainage pattern for your site. But again, we're just going to keep this simple. If you see this green line, these are basically our storm structures. This is what we've decided, within our design that, okay, what I would like to do, essentially, if you think of a flat surface or piece of paper, what I would like to do with my parking lot, this is my parking lot, I would like to more or less create like a trough or like a swale that all of the water from my parking lot is going to be draining into the middle of my parking lot, which is where my structures are located. Okay, so you have to think of drainage patterns in kind of a way of almost like a sheet of paper that you're looking to kind of fold and create, different high points and low points. Within this exercise, it's just going to be one low point, which is going to drain, and our structures are going to be catching all of our water from our parking lot, and it's going to drain into our pond. So at this point, do we have any surfaces right now? No. I don't even have a existing grade surface within this drawing. So I need to create something just really basic. I'm going to go in here, I'm going to create a surface. Excuse me. I'm just going to call this EG. And I don't want a style assigned to this. I'm going to put this on no display. And we're going to need a finished grade surface, right? So we'll create a brand new surface. Finished grade surface. No display for right now. Okay. For our existing grade surface, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle. I'm going to go from here to here, just so it covers our site. And I'm going to make this into a feature line. Create feature lines from objects. Select that rectangle. And you see how we have sites right here? We can choose whichever site we want to put this in, but I want to create a brand new one. I'm going to create an existing site. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and give this give the feature line a name. I'm going to call this, I don't know, existing. Next, I'm going to assign elevations. I'm going to erase the existing entities, which is going to be erasing our polyline. I'll click OK. Now we're going to be adding an elevation of 100, which is just something basic. An elevation of 100. Click OK. And now we need to select this. Then we need to add to surface as a break line, because there's nothing within our existing surface right now. We've got our EG, and we click OK. I'm going to call this existing outer boundary. You can call it whatever you want. For right now, just for good practice, I'm going to keep the supplementing factors. I'm going to keep this at 10 and the mid-ordinate distance. I know we're not dealing with any kind of curves as of right now, but I want these to be my settings. And we'll get into that at a later time. Okay, so if we go under surfaces, existing grade surface, definitions, looks like right now we have one break line. Break lines. There we go. Right click on this and select it. For whatever reason, it's not highlighting, but you get the gist. Okay? So we have our existing grade surface. Next, what I would like to do is I would like to, I don't know, maybe organize my sites a little bit better. I know that with my sites, the way that they organize this is in alphabetical order. And I'd like to be able to keep my existing site up at the top. So I'm going to right click on this, select properties. I'm going to type in 01, existing. Next, for buildings, I'm going to make this 02. For parking lots, we'll make this 03. And for ponds, 04. You can organize this in any way that you please, but this is just the way that I do it. Okay. So now, we've decided in preliminary discussions that the client wants the finished floor of their building, building 1, they want it set at 105, okay? So 5 feet above the existing grade. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. So we've got our building 1, go into feature line, create feature lines from objects, select this, press enter. So which site do you think we're going to put it in? You guessed it, buildings. Now I'm going to name this feature line, I'm going to call this building. I'm going to do some abbreviating here. 1 feature. Style, I'm going to leave it as is. We're going to assign elevations. We're going to erase the existing entities. Click OK. And now we're just going to assign an elevation of 105. Okay, great. So now, since we have, I mean, this is more or less kind of like a proposed elevation, right? I mean, we've got, you know, an elevation of 105. We've got a feature line here. Couldn't we add this to our finished grade surface right now? Sure. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go into FG. And the way that we do this is we're going to select this feature line, add to surface as a break line. And we want to make sure that we select FG. Click OK. And we're going to call this building 1. Okay, everything looks good here. Click OK. And now within FG, we have a definition that shows up here. And as we're naming all of our break lines and feature lines, it's keeping everything organized, right? It's keeping everything organized within our site. Let's go ahead and check out our building site. We'll look at this, feature lines, there it is, beautiful. So in other words, as you're organizing your sites and you're organizing and naming your feature lines and break lines, it makes it a little bit easier for people to come in behind you that might be working on the project as well, and it gives them some sense of what you're doing. You know, it gives some rhyme or reason for the madness that you're trying to design. So after that, we've got our pond 1, and we've decided that the high water elevation, we're going to have it at 99. Okay, this is just an arbitrary number. I basically put that number in there just for I don't know, to you know, compensate for something like 1 foot of freeboard or something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my pond 1. I'm going to go into feature line, create feature lines from objects, go into my ponds. I'm going to call this pond 1 high water level. Technically, I don't think I need a counter, but for this example, I'm just going to leave it. Everything else here, we're going to erase that polyline. We're going to assign elevations. And this time, rather than assigning an elevation of 105, I'm just going to assign, actually, instead of doing that, I'd rather go with from surface. I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to take my elevations from the existing grade surface. I don't want to insert intermediate grade points. I'm going to click OK. And you can see that our minimum elevation and our maximum elevation, everything is pretty much set to our existing elevation. Okay? Now, what I would like to do, I'm not going to focus too much on that high water elevation as of right now. I just want to give you the gist of how I'm organizing all of my feature lines into different sites. Okay? So right now, if we go into ponds, we have our feature line. And I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this, instead of high water level, I'm going to rename this to EG. Okay? All right. Next, I'm going to select this feature line, and I'm going to do a stepped offset in order to get my high water level. So I'm going to select this, specify an offset distance. I'm going to go, let's say 4 feet. Side to offset, I'm going to choose the middle right here. And then for the elevation, I'm going to choose an elevation here. I'm going to choose an elevation of 99. Press enter. And we take a look at what we've got going on here. We've got our minimum and max elevation. We're at 99. Really easy peasy, right? And as we're looking at our feature lines here, we've got a name for our existing grade, which is basically our outer bowl of our pond. However, we don't have anything for that second feature line for the high water level, so I'm going to go ahead and select the high water line. I'm going to apply feature line names. We're going to call this Pond 1 High Water Level. Actually, before I do this, no, I don't want to overthink it. We'll keep it just like that. And there we go, showing up now. Okay, so now that we have these two feature lines, couldn't we add this to our finished grade surface? Sure we can. We'll add to surface as break line. Finished grade surface, click OK. And what are we going to name this? We're going to name this Pond 1 EG, and hopefully using that symbol won't mess up my description here, but I'm going to call this high water level. Click OK. So now, if somebody comes in behind you and they're looking at your finished grade surface and they're wondering, okay, what are the feature lines that make up the finished grade surface within this drawing? If I go into definition, break lines, everything's labeled here. See, we've got our building 1 and we've got building 1 EG and high water level. If you wanted to, you could even take this, delete that break line, and if you wanted to split this up, say you wanted the high water break line to have its own name, you know, add to surfaces break line. FG, okay, we'll call this pond 1 high water level. Could do it that way. And then we'll go ahead and select our surface here, right click, rebuild automatic. There we go. Break lines, there we go. There's our pond 1 high water level. So it's all up to you as to how you want to organize things, but again, as you're going through this and you're naming everything, it's very helpful for your entire team to know what is going on with your drawing. Okay, so plus, you know, when you have all of these different break lines that are named in so many different ways, you know, it kind of looks, if you ship this drawing off to, say, another client that maybe knows a little bit about Civil 3D and they're trying to figure things out as well, you know, it becomes like just madness when you're looking at all of these break lines and they don't have any sort of naming conventions. You know, it's very, very screwy, right? I'm sure you wouldn't want to work with that. So that's why it's important as you're maybe creating your feature lines that you're naming all of them. That's one of the things that I didn't do when I was beginning in Civil 3D. You know, I would just go ahead and just accept whatever description it would give me, and when I would come back to the drawing, maybe about a month later, I wouldn't know what I did, you know, because nothing was organized. My feature lines weren't organized. And again, that's the great thing about having everything situated within your sites. Okay, now I'm going to show you, I think lastly, where are we at here? We're almost at about a half hour. We'll see how far we get with this. Now we're getting into, okay, we discussed the drainage pattern for our parking lot, right? Remember this? Well, I would like to create a separate site that's more or less the drainage pattern for my parking lot, okay? And this is essentially going to be my piece of paper, or my parking lot grid. I'll show you. If I go into sites, right click on this, select new. I'm going to call this 05 parking grid. Okay? And I'm going to go and create a rectangle that goes from, this is just arbitrary, okay? That goes from here, I don't know, maybe to here, okay? Very arbitrary. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to generate some elevations on this sheet of paper. And these elevations are more or less going to be my edge of pavement elevations. Okay, so as of right now, we're designing this building to have a finished floor of 105. Okay, I would like my parking lot edge of pavement to be to compensate for, you know, maybe like a 6-inch curb. So I'm going to set this rectangle. I'm going to make this into a feature line. I'm going to set this rectangle to be a ½ a foot below this finished floor elevation. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go feature line, create feature lines from objects. Make sure I'm in the proper site, which is my parking grid. I'm going to name this. You know what? I'm going to hold off on naming this. We're going to name this later. I'm going to select OK. I'm going to make this elevation, because my building elevation is at 105. I'm going to make this 104.5. Just edge of pavement, okay? And just for clarity, I'd like to change the look of this feature line. I'm not seeing any styles that I like. What if I create a style? What if I, let me think about this a little bit. I'm going to create two different styles. I'm going to go into Create Edit. Let's select Basic Feature Line. I'm going to come down here, copy current selection. I'm going to call this Primary. The display, I'd like to change the display to, should I go with cyan? Hopefully people can see that. Or maybe yellow. We'll go with yellow. Click OK. And apply, then OK. OK. All right. So we have our yellow feature line here. And we can make sure that it's in the proper site by looking in the data. It says Site within Properties, Parking Grid. Okay? And it's set to 104.5. Now the next thing that I would like to do, and that this 104.5, you have to be able to start from somewhere when you're grading, your planes, when you're grading your sheets of paper, your grid, because eventually what you can do with design is you can raise or lower these, I guess, plateaus, if you would like to call them that, your sheets of paper. It's almost like Mario Brothers, with the different platforms, because sometimes you get into situations to where, the developer maybe wants to have a different parking lot over here. Like, for example, I've got another parking lot. It's basically a copy of what I just did. What if they wanted to do the same thing with their layout design, but with this, there might be a different drainage pattern that we go with, or these might be at a different elevation or a different parking grid that's separate from our parking lot 1. So you're dealing with different, I guess, platforms or different parking lot grids, more or less, and you want to be able to have that kind of control. And having everything organized again within sites kind of helps you out with that. It kind of keeps things organized within your brain. So I'm just going to undo what I just did here. Okay. Now what do we say? We want to be able to drain all of our water to come down, and we want our inlets to catch in these locations. So how am I going to do that? Well, what I can do is I can generate, hold on here. I can generate another feature line. I'm going to come in, I'm going to create a low point, more or less. Here's our sheet of paper. Right now it's at 104.5. I want to keep that 104.5 around, I guess, my bowl area, if you want to call it that, but I want to be able to drain to my inlets. So the way that I do that, I'll create some lines here. Come on. What is going on? Polyline. I'll go from here to here. Let's stretch this all the way over to here. I'm going to turn off my storm or freeze my storm pipe. Oops, don't want to do that. Make sure these are on different layers. Storm structure, we don't want that. We want to put this on storm pipe. I'm going to do some cleanup real quick here so you guys can see what's going on here. Storm pipe. Okay. All right, we're bringing it back. So now, I'll freeze my pipe. And I have just a basic polyline right now. And I want to create a feature line out of that. Feature line, create feature lines from objects. Parking lot grid, that's good. I'm going to call this low point. Click OK. What's the elevation going to be? Well, I don't know yet. I'm going to keep it at 104.5. I'd like to change the look of this so you guys can see it a little bit better. I change this to, instead of primary, I want this to be secondary. And I'll show you the reason why in a minute. I'm going to create another style. I'll call this secondary. Click OK. OK here. I'm going to change the look of that. Edit this. Click this button. Display. We'll change that from a yellow to, I don't know, maybe like a cyan color. Then OK. Now the reason why I did that was because whenever you have crossing feature lines, you want one, normally within Civil 3D, the last edited feature line, that elevation takes precedent, okay? So in other words, if I change this elevation, wherever this crosses, that's going to take precedent. However, with this secondary feature line, that is going to help me with the crossing order, more or less. So if I go into sites, excuse me, not sites, parking lot grid, I'm going to expand this, go into my feature lines. Take a look at my low point feature. Well, how about we go ahead and rename our outer boundary for this. Okay. For feature lines, I'm going to right click, go into properties. And within options, we have something here called feature line crossings split point resolution. So normally, like I said, with Civil 3D, the last edited feature line, that elevation takes precedence. Well, if you have feature lines with certain styles, you can change that precedent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring primary all the way to the top. Primary. And then I'm going to bring secondary just underneath primary. Click apply, then OK. Okay, now we have our primary feature line here. This is our grid. What I'd like to do is I'd like to be able to create low points right here. Where are we at here? This is set at 104.5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select my outer boundary, and with 2023, with Civil 3D 2023, within Edit Geometry, they have this button. Insert points at crossing locations. I'm going to select that. Then in my command line, it says point type to insert. It says PI. I'll type in enter. So now it created PI points so that I can come into my parking lot grid and I can start editing my slopes. So right now we've got 104.5. I want to slope this at negative 2%. I want to make 2% my minimum, more or less. Okay? What about the other side? That brings us at a negative 2.4%. So we're good. If 2% is our minimum, we've got 2.4 on the other side. And then we've got this over here. I want to grade this before I do that. Hold up. If I'm sloping to my structures this way, I want to be able to drain my sheet of paper. I want to be able to drain away from my building like this into my detention pond. Just think, if our building is right here, our pond is right here, we want to be able to slope in this direction as well. So we've got two different directions that we're dealing with this sheet of paper. Where are we at here? 36 minutes? Okay. So the way that I accomplish this, I come in here. We've got 104.5. I want to slope this negative 2% this way. I want to go negative 2% this way. So that brings us down to 102.13, okay? Where does that leave us over here? Are we still at 2%? Yeah, we're still good. Okay. So now, wait a minute, that's not, okay, here we go. We've got negative 2% here. I want to come down back to my low point, negative 2%, which the other side should be at negative 2.4. Yep, excellent. Okay. So now we have that sheet of paper just like this. That's our parking lot grid. That's what that's used for. Next, what I would like to do, I'd like to create a surface from what I just did. Create a surface. We're going to call this parking lot grid. Click OK. Where are we at with our low point? Let's check out these slopes. How are we doing with these? What does that look like? Yeah, that's negative 2%. That's good. Okay. So now I would like to add these two feature lines as a break line to my parking lot grid. I'm going to call this, again, you can break these into individual break lines to where you're naming each description one way, but I'm going to call this outer and low point. I'm just combining the two feature lines into one description. Click OK. All right, now this is where it gets fun. We have our drainage pattern, okay? We've decided what our drainage pattern is going to be. For right now, it's sloping from the building to the detention pond, and we're creating a little gully as well in order to drain out to the pond. Gully, low point, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so now we want our edge of pavement, which is which are these two polylines currently, I want that to take on the elevations of my parking lot grid, okay? So the way that I do that is I'll come in here under feature line, create feature lines from objects. Rather than putting this into the parking grid site, I want to put this into parking lots. And I want to call this lot 1 edge of pavement. Because I don't want this the parking lot to be within my parking lot grid. I want the parking lot grid to be independent of the parking lot site. You can do it however you wish. This is just the way that I do it. Okay. So now, click OK, and I'm going to get my elevations from a surface, and it's going to be from the parking lot grid. And I want to make these feature lines relative to that parking lot grid. I want them to be at the 0. I want that to snap directly to my parking lot grid. So we'll check this, relative elevation to surface. It's going to be at 0. Select OK. Check this. Let's see where we're at. Let's see how well I did. Let's see if I know what I'm talking about here. Okay. It doesn't look like it's taking on that point. What about that? Huh. Okay. Let's take a look at our grades. Go in our quick elevation editor. Well, that's at 2%. That's good, because we want that sloping to our detention pond at 2%. What about this other stuff? That's at 2%. All right, we're doing something good here. We're doing something right. All right, negative 2% here, negative 2% here. However, what about this? It's not taking on this this low point here. Okay, we've got, yeah, we shouldn't pay that no mind right now. That's 2%, that's good. Okay, well, what do I do here? I've got this piece right here that I'd like to take on. What if I did this? If I go into edit geometry, I select this again, will that do it? PI, that's good. It didn't do it for me. What am I doing wrong here? I know why. Because I believe it's in a different site. If it's in a different site, it's not going to take on that PI. See, because right now we're in parking lots. However, since this feature line is within parking lots, it's not taking this low point into account. So for right now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to select this feature line. I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to select move to site just temporarily. I'm going to destination site. We're going to put this in the parking lot grid. Click OK. And so now, if I come in here and select this, oops, before I do that, select one at a time. Here we go. Edit geometry, select this, insert points at crossing locations since we're in the same site now. Did that do it? There we go. Now we have those PI points just for this one. Let's do it for the next one. I'm going to select this, edit geometry, insert points at crossing locations. PI, we'll accept that. Okay, now I don't want to keep this within my parking grid site. Again, I'd like to move this back into my parking lots. Click OK. So now I'm going to come into my surfaces and just clear this out real quick here. Rebuild automatic, so we don't see that no more. Okay, so where are we at here? Is it showing the proper elevations? There we go, negative 2% here. 2.4, that's okay. Negative 2, negative 2. Okay, it's looking good. 2.4. There we go. There we go, it's sloping in the proper directions. Alrighty. So now the next thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to offset for my curve, for the top of curb. So the way that I do that is I can come in here and I can do a stepped offset. Offset distance, I'm going to go with 0.5 horizontally. Side to offset, we want the outer. And for elevation, actually I'm going to choose difference. I'm going to make that 0.5. We want to go 0.5 or half a foot from our edge of pavement to get our top of curb elevation. So there's that. I'm going to do the same thing with this. .5. Side to offset, select the interior of this. 0.5. There we go. And this is a little bit goofy. This is this has to do with a previous setting that I had set for my building footprint. But you can change this to be just a sharp point, more or less. I'm not going to deal with that for right now. I just want to show you the gist of how to go about using relative feature lines, okay? So I'm going to come in here and look at my parking. I know that these two lines are within parking lots. They aren't named. I'd like to be able to name them. Apply feature line names. We're going to call this parking lot curb. Select OK. And go into my parking lots site. I'm going to look at my feature lines and see if it named it properly. Yeah, it looks good to me. All this other stuff, we can probably, we'll call this lot 1 curb instead. Oops, don't want to do that. Lot 1 curb. There we go. Just trying to keep things organized and consistent. Lot 1 curb. I want to erase all this other junk. Okay, so now, are these curbs relative to my parking lot grid? I don't know, let's check it out. Let's see where we're at. If I look at my elevation editor, I look here, it's set to all these different elevations, but it's not relative to my parking lot grid surface. The reason how I know is that this section right here, relative to surface, it's set to none. I want to make sure that it's set to parking lot grid. And I want this to be at an absolute elevation. And I'm going to shift select all of this. And under elevation relative, I want that to be, come on. No, I don't want this to be absolute elevation, excuse me. I want this to be relative to surface. Click this. And I think that because some of these feature lines are outside of that parking lot grid area, I think that it's going to be set, the absolute elevation is going to be set. But let me see if I can change this. No, it won't let me do it. Okay. So I'm just going to select all of these, and the ones that are within that parking lot grid, I'm going to go 0.5 above my edge of pavement. So now let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at our elevation. This elevation is at 102.84. This is at 103.35. There we go. So we've got a half a foot in between. So that's good. What about this? 102.16. Let's take a look at this. Select the curb, elevation editor. Oh, it's not relative to the surface. Select our parking lot grid. And we don't want this at an absolute elevation. We want this relative to surface. Select all of these. 0.5. So if our parking lot grid raises or lowers, then our edge of pavement and top of curb elevations will lower right along with it. So that's one of the beauties of this system, of this way of organizing your grading in this way. So I'm just going to go ahead and accept that. And the reason why I was mentioning that I couldn't change some of those elevations from absolute elevation to relative is because you see our limits of our parking lot grid is right here, and we have feature lines that are outside of it. We have our edge of pavement out here, and I think if I go into my elevation editor, see right here, it's selecting points that are outside of our grid. So that's why it's set to absolute elevation. Okay, we'll okay that. So where are we at now? We're almost at about an hour. And I think we're almost at a good stopping point here. Let me see if I can think of anything else. Oh, how about we add our curb and gutter to, or our curb and edge of pavement to our finished grade surface? That would be helpful. I'm not going to add it to my parking lot grid. I'm going to add it to my finished grade surface. So I'm going to select my curbs. Add to surfaces break line. I choose a surface, FG, not parking lot grid, and click OK. I'm going to call this parking. Well, we'll call this lot 1 curb and edge of pavement. Click OK. And there we go. It's all listed right in here. So it's nicely organized. And if anything happens with my parking lot grid, let's just do an example. If I put in let's annotate feature. I'm going to select surface, spot elevation. I'm going to add a few spot elevations here. Let's select surface from a list, FG. Here we go. Okay. We've got 102.84 right here. I'm going to add another one. Oops. Surface, spot elevation, add. Select from parking lot, grid. So there we go. Okay. If I wanted to, remember how these feature lines are in a different site from our parking lot grid? Well, if the contractor or if the builder says, oh, I want to raise my building up, I right click, they want to raise it to 105.5. 105.5. They're really particular about their finished floor elevations, right? Okay. We need to change this. Right now it's at 105. Right click, raise and lower. We're going to raise this a half a foot, 0.5. Or if I wanted to, I can raise it to that elevation. Select this, 105.5. What if they wanted it at 106.5? Select this, right click, raise and lower. Instead of 0.5, I'm going to type in an elevation. 106.5. Select that. Okay, good. So what does that mean for our parking lot grid? I want to shift this up. What's the difference between 106.5 and 104.5? Because I still want, oh, we basically need to make this 106 because we want to account for that 6-inch, for the 6-inch curb, okay? If I select my grid, actually I'm going to select it within my sites. Parking lot grid, feature lines. Right click this, raise and lower. We're going to raise this about 1.5 feet, 1.5. See how these elevations changed? We've got 106 now, and this is at 104.34, okay? And if I look at my feature lines, everything's intact for my slopes. So it makes things very, very helpful when you have a client that can't make up their mind what they want their finished floor elevation to be. You can use that parking lot grid to raise and lower it. So that's essentially it, folks. We're running at about an hour right now. Okay, let's take a look at the chat. Okay, Sherm. What's up, Sherm? He says, joining late, sorry if you already explained, but are we going to model the curb with a corridor and assembly off that feature line? In my opinion, it's much friendlier than using feature lines and infills. It's up to you. I mean, I've seen it done both ways. The only problem that I've encountered with using a corridor assembly, I know I've shown videos about, you know, using that method for a parking lot. The problem is that Civil 3D can be very, very unstable with doing it that way, and sometimes just using feature lines like this makes things a little bit, hopefully a little bit more easier for people. The other thing is that sometimes when you're working in an office, a lot of people don't know how to make modifications to, you know, curb and gutter assemblies, you know, that are attached to the feature line, that you know, essentially what you're talking about. Some people don't know how to do that. Some people don't know how to do that within your team. So most people, they know how to manipulate feature lines. So hopefully it's just a way of just being able to simplify using feature lines and staying away from how unstable corridors and assemblies can be within the program. But that's a good question, by the way, because I mean, it's up to you. Sometimes if you're the only one working on the project, yeah, I mean, I say go for it. There's a lot of different ways to do things, so that's just another way. You know, if that works for you, keep going with it. So yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. Thank you folks for joining me. This is just, again, I'm working out course content for this particular subject within my my parking lots course. Let me see if I can think of anything else. When I was talking about different drainage patterns, you know, this is one drainage pattern. Another drainage pattern is within my course. I currently have a spine road that goes throughout the site, and I graded that in a different way. You know, I use feature lines, but I use the feature lines in a different way, in a different drainage pattern. So when I'm grading, say, a spine road right here, I want to be able to focus my attention on that spine road. I want to focus my attention on the spine road so it doesn't interfere with the parking lot. And that's why I create a separate site for the main spine road. Okay, so if I get about halfway done with my main spine road and then all of a sudden I want to start getting into, you know, grading my parking lot, well, you know, if I can just leave my spine road alone, and then the method to the madness is that I can go into my sites and start working on this a little bit. So that's just another way of doing things. It's just I like to be able to separate my drainage patterns by, you know, site component, like buildings, maybe parking lot 1 or parking lot 2, or what else? You know, drainage pond 1, drainage pond 2. Another way to do this stuff is that, you know, later on when the developer wants to add another piece to this, I'd like to be able to break out my sites in a different way. Like right now I've got everything within parking lots. Well, what if I want to separate my parking lots? I want to rename this parking lot 1 because I have a brand new parking lot. What if I want to come in here, new, 03, parking lot 2 for the brand new addition that's going in over here. You know, you can do it that way. So that when somebody comes in behind you and they're wondering, okay, this area right here, where are all the feature lines for parking lot 1? Oh, okay, go into sites, parking lot 1, it's all right here. What about parking lot 2? Where are we at? Well, here's parking lot 2. It's good to label these parking lots, by the way. That's helpful. Parking lot 2. Okay, we've got that right here. So, you know, it helps out your team by organizing things in that way. And again, making sure that you name all of your feature lines, that'll help your entire team. So I appreciate everybody showing up, and man, it's over an hour. Man, you stuck with me for over an hour. That's fantastic. If you're interested in more course content, feel free to become a member and just like and subscribe and take a look at the members only content. You know, there's also a way of being able to get to join for free. If you go to watch.civil3d.tv, you can go there and get like a 3-day trial membership just to peruse the content and see if you like it. So until next time, take care, folks. God bless and